There are many different methods out there to work out the correct saddle height for you, but with so many different formulas, which one do you pick? Well, today I'm going to go through the most popular methods to use and the pros and cons of each. Sat on the saddle in your biking shoes, put your heel on the pedal at the furthest point. Then get off the bike and adjust the saddle until your heel rests gently on it. This will achieve a slight bend in the knee when you come to place the ball of the foot on the center of the pedal or when you come to clip in. If your heel doesn't reach the pedal, chances are your saddle is too high. If your knee is bent while your heel is on the pedal, chances are your saddle is too low. Now, the good thing about using this method is that it forces you to use your riding shoes, which can have up to 20 mils of stack in the sole, and that does contribute to your overall leg length, so you do want to include that. It also forces you to have a slight bend in your knee, which is good from a safety point of view because it stops you overextending your joints, so it prevents you getting knee injuries, and it will stop you reaching for the pedals, which means you won't be rocking your hips, which can give you hip pain, but also lower back pain. The bad thing about this method is that it's really fiddly and time consuming. You're going to have to get off your bike multiple times to adjust the saddle height, and it may not be 100% accurate when you're finished with it. It's also really easy to unintentionally reach for the pedals. You may slip over the sides of the saddle, especially if your saddle is not super supportive on your sit bones, and that could give you an inaccurate reading. If you reach for the pedal, you may then give yourself a number that is longer than what you need, which could cause you injury when you actually go out to ride. If you're going to use this method, a good tip is to try backpedaling with your heels, because this will show if there's any inconsistencies in your pedal stroke, but also give you a chance to settle into your riding position. Now, you want to be doing this sat where you usually sit on your saddle. Try not to lean on the side too much, which may raise your body and you won't be settled into your normal seated position. Better still, get on a turbo trainer and spin for a little while so that you can settle into your normal position, and then you can go ahead and do these measurements while you're supported by the trainer. The Le Monde method multiplies your inseam measurement in millimeters by 0.883, and this resulting measurement is then used on the distance between the top of your saddle and the center of your bike's bottom bracket. The good thing about this method is Le Monde was a very successful professional road cyclist, but the bad thing is he was a professional road cyclist back in the 80s when crank lengths were almost consistently 175 millimeters. These days we have a lot more choice, and his theory doesn't take into account crank length. So if I were to use his and set my saddle to bottom bracket height, and then I were to change my crank length from 175 to say 155, I could potentially have a saddle height that is 20 mils too short. If you're adamant in using a formula to work out your saddle height, you could use the Hamley method, and this is your inseam measurement multiplied by 1.09, and that will give you a measurement that's regardless of any crank length. It will give you a measurement that is your saddle to pedal height. Now, instantly it's interesting to work out my measurements with these formulas, because my inseam is 790 millimeters, and if you were to use the Le Monde method plus 165 millimeter cranks, my total length from saddle to pedal would be 863 with Le Monde, and with Hamley it would be 861, so they're not that dissimilar. What's worrying though is that is actually 70 millimeters or so more than my inseam, and I'm quite a flat-footed pedaler. I don't ride toe down like some people, which means I would almost certainly be overreaching for my pedals and I could give myself a knee injury. I have actually tried these measurements before and they are way too much for me, so just a word of caution on that one. This is a favourite of mine, but it is also just another starting point. Now, this method involves making the pedal to saddle height the same as my inseam in my riding shoes. So if I had a measurement of 790, including my riding shoes, this is what my pedal to saddle height will always be. The good thing about this method is that you can carry this one number across with you forever and use it across multiple different bikes, regardless of what crank length or what saddle depth you've got. And also, if you decide to change your saddle or change your cranks, all you have to do is remember that one number and reset your saddle to pedal height to that number. The bad thing about this method is it kind of assumes you're a bit of a flat-footed pedaler, a bit like myself. And if you are a toe-down pedaler, then this might leave your saddle height a little bit too short for you, which could be less powerful and efficient if you're out and racing. However, I do think going lower rather than higher is a safer place to start, and you're less likely to give yourself any injuries in the outset. My advice to you if you're going to use this method is always remeasure if you change your shoes, because there could be 10 or even 20 mil of difference in the stack of your soles. If you decide that your saddle height is too low in this position and you want to readjust it, make sure you only adjust by 5 mil at a time. That may seem tiny, but it's actually quite a big movement for your body. And go out and ride it gently and for a short ride for the first time so that you can bed in your muscles and your joints again. And give it a few goes, maybe a couple of weeks before you decide whether it's correct for you or not, because it can take time for your body to unlearn some bad habits. One thing I haven't mentioned throughout each of these methods is where to measure on the saddle, because if you were to measure at the back or if you were to measure at the front, that could be tens of millimeters different. Now, what I'll say is try to go for where you think you are centralized on the saddle. If not, just measure the center of the saddle and see how you get on. But I do want to stress that you need to be making small incremental changes, say 5 mil at a time, and riding them gently for the first go and going out a few times before you decide whether that saddle height is right for you or not. It takes time for our body to adjust, and if you rush it, then you can give yourself an injury. Also, I've assumed that we're all perfect human beings here, which most of us are not. If you have any leg length indifferences, or if you wear different shoe sizes perhaps, or even if your knees rotate in an unusual pattern and hit the top tube, chances are you're not that perfect, and you might want to spend a little bit of extra cash going to see a professional bike fitter that will get you sized up and fitted on your bike correctly. Anyway, thank you for watching, and let me know down in the comments below what method you use and how you've got on with your own saddle height journey, and hopefully we'll inspire some other people to give it a go on theirs.